Okay, so I just want to thank you so much for, from my heart to your heart, for being willing to do this and be under the lights and
Thank you for putting me
just
on the
trying
lights.
this. And it's only because this idea about doing leadership that you have written about in this article is so compelling, and I'm really happy that you'll talk to me about it for the blog. Could you talk a little bit more about how you design a course for doing leadership with students?
I get them to role play either a historical actor or a candidate, depending on the simulation activity. And once they have the instructions, I give them clear guidelines with all the roles clearly defined, but open enough for them to bring in their own personalities, for instance. So you can have, I had in the past, a female playing Harry Truman. Right? So a Mexican-American female playing Harry Truman. So, this is very dynamic. Or I've had a conservative-leaning, Republican-centered student playing Bill Clinton, for instance. So they don't have a choice as to who they get. It's a lottery, so they have to pick out of a hat. And if they get Bill Clinton, if they hate that person's guts, in terms of ideological perspective or what have you, that's who they get. And so this is part of the process of dealing with real world uncertainty, with things that you can't control in a sense, but you have to deal with them and see how you manage. So no one's born a leader. This is a myth.
Right.
People are born a leader, or you can learn. You can learn. Anyone can learn. And it doesn't matter where you are in an organization, for instance. So it isn't about managers who are keeping stability and order and leaders are the visionary. Anyone can do both. And it's a thing that it's a process that I see.
So can you tell a little bit more about what the students look like doing leadership?
Well, one of the major goals of this process is building student confidence. And I see that immediately. As I said earlier, is an 8 to 10 week process. So you see the most introvert, shy student just blossom, just emerge out of nowhere and become a debating champion almost. So it's a process where you see them just creating meaning for themselves and for the group. And that's exciting to see. And they share that with me in conversations and student evaluations. The other one is the types of questions that they begin to ask. Deeper, more intellectual, more informed questions as they move along, as they learn more about the simulation. They learn about political dynamics inside groups and also how to apply that perspective outside the group. So basically, part of the design is try to create as close as possible assignments that tap into the real world, so-called real world. So basically, looking at current policy debates. That's one way of looking at it, and that allows them to do the research and look at so-called expert opinions, but then also make their own arguments and come up with their own conclusions as a group. So there's different things that go in designing. It takes a long time. I have a different assignment that I have not implemented here at Ithaca College as yet, but hopefully one day I will. And this is what I'm teaching the U.S. Congress. So in the congressional simulation, here you are basically running for office. You're running for either the House or the Senate. So they're simulating an election campaign. So everything that has to do with an election campaign. So then you have your own groups. You have the campaign manager. You have the person who deals with the press secretary, for instance. You have the candidate. You have the candidate's wife or spouse, husband, or depending on the spouse. You also have events like Meet the Press. So you have the reporters groups. They report. They put it on their online sites. So it's basically creating a simulation throughout the whole process. And of course, what develops over time, because we're human, is you have infighting. And that's also great. You have people negotiating with other groups, trying to undermine the image of their own candidate. So these kinds of things happen in simulation activities, and we have a reflection or a debriefing, in a sense, at the end of the semester to talk about what they've learned. So the classroom becomes a kind of a political scene. Life in itself comes to
It does feel,
plays out.
it feels very alive.
Yes, it does.
And it feels very meaningful in terms, you talk about meaningful in terms of the students taking on these perspectives, and it feels like a significant learning experience.
Yes, very
So-
significant learning experience, active learning, and then I also add active citizenship. So it's basically how do you become an active citizen in this environment? And I always tell them that these simulations, because there is no program anywhere that teaches you how to become a congressman. Right? You don't go to a university and I'm going to major in congressman, or I'm going to major in politician. Right? These are things that you learn over time through experience, and this is as close as you can come to gaining that experience.
You,
Yes.
Carlos, have a very particular perspective on leadership in teaching. Can you say a little bit about that?
I think about leadership in a broader sense, in a constitutive process, where the individual in a particular environment is creating meaning, not only for him or herself, but for others, and also bringing others into the fold, in a sense. So I call it a constitutive experience. And here, the meaning-making process takes different form. And this is why I play around or experiment in the classroom with different pedagogical tools and techniques to try to bring out this process. This I'm not sure if it's a process. I call it more of an experience. It's something that you have to just engage in I hate to use the cliche, the organic process, but it's more of an experience. It's a constitutive experience where anyone can become a leader.